So I wasn't actually planning to make a video about this, but the fact is I've been sitting here for the past few hours grading final exams, and I still have about 120 of them to go, and I just need to get my mind off of that somehow. So I figured that I would just let the record button go and talk a little bit about this recent piece of news. So, for those of you who have not heard, a remake of One Piece to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the anime will recreate the story of the original manga starting from the East Blue arc, and, though unconfirmed at this time, will likely extend beyond that. This adaptation, headed by Studio Wit, will be produced primarily by Netflix and Shueisha. And while there is no actual date of release scheduled, at least that I could immediately find, that could not be confirmed, the major speculation is that it's going to be happening at the end of 2024 or closer to the start of 2025. So, I want to talk a little bit about some of the perceived positives and some of the perceived skepticisms that I have about this project. For one, let's talk about the positives first. For one of the major complaints about the One Piece anime that some people have is that they don't think that the animation for it looks particularly good, or that they think that the overall aesthetic of the show somehow just does not work. The idea of Studio Wit, therefore, taking on this project means re-envisioning the manga as an anime with a different look. Not necessarily an upgraded look, because we haven't actually seen anything yet, but at the very least, the idea that it will look different and that therefore it has the potential to be better. One of the other major positives that people have is the idea that this could eliminate a lot of the filler in One Piece. One Piece, at the time that I'm recording this, is just shy of about 1,100 episodes, and in the span of that 1,100 episodes, there are quite a number of filler arcs, in part because since the One Piece manga is also being published weekly at the time that I'm recording this, the anime obviously cannot get too far ahead of the manga, and therefore has to create new, entirely self-contained arcs in order to make sure that they will eventually have enough canon material to adapt. This is also part of the reason why a lot of Dragon Ball fans, when Dragon Ball Z Kai was announced, were very excited about that, because it was going to cut down the original 297 some odd Dragon Ball Z down to roughly about 160, 170 episodes. I don't actually remember the official episode count off the top of my head. I'm sure I'll probably put a little text comment in the video here just to clarify that. The other thing that people will probably think that this will do is fix some of the pacing, even within some of the canon arcs. Another one of the major complaints about One Piece now is that because the anime is catching up to the manga so closely, that entire chunks of episodes are spent sometimes on a single page of the manga. And obviously, this can cause problems in regards to pacing, or the episodes being a little too short, or what is one of the complaints being that all this build-up for those singular moments that usually find their way onto Sakugaboru, that people will then watch religiously. So those are some of the initial positives that people are speculating for this, and I'm also entertaining some of these positives as well, but I do want to also get into some of my skepticisms. One of the skepticisms I have is the idea that this will get people into One Piece, which I get, but the question that I have to ask is, was One Piece being the sellingest manga in history, as well as being one of the most popular anime in history, somehow not enough to get people to start reading One Piece? The idea that this will somehow be the magical golden ticket that gets people reading the manga, when all of the recommendations from both, I presume, friends and also some of the big Anitubers that exist on here already, somehow was not enough, I'm a little bit skeptical of the idea that somehow this was the missing ingredient, because One Piece has been around for decades. The idea that somehow now, all of a sudden, we have the final ingredient in order to get more people reading and watching One Piece is something that I find kind of interesting, especially considering that One Piece, the fan-made truncated version of it, already exists, and it's also not that hard to find either. So that's one skepticism I have. Like, all of that somehow was not enough. The other is that no staff has been named yet. We don't know who the director is. We don't know who the art director is. We don't know who's the director of photography. We don't know who's in charge of the series composition. We don't know anything about that. And considering that the look is one of the major points of critique that people have about the current adaptation of One Piece by Toei, being able to get an early glimpse about what to expect in terms of the visuals is going to go a long way in getting an early gauge for how this will end up going, and also in terms of the style that the show might possibly do. Is the director somebody who has worked with this particular off-kilter brand of slapstick comedy and occasional absurdism that One Piece loves to indulge in, which is to say nothing of its action choreography? Is the series composer somebody who has done script work for comedies, and especially maybe shonen involves comedy to some extent? What kind of backgrounds can we expect when the art director gets named? This is all information that is important in order to gauge whether this could possibly succeed at the visual level or not. Another skepticism point that I have is in the announcement by Netflix, it said that there was going to be cutting-edge visual technology. I have no idea what the hell this means. Does this imply that somehow Toei has not changed how they've been doing animation in One Piece since the series first started debuting in 1999? That Toei is somehow still using all their old computers before? It's not like no other studio does rotoscoping or digital compositing or anything like that. So what exactly is this cutting-edge visual technology that they're talking about? The especially cynical thought that people have, and I have to admit I am a little bit eyebrow-raising at this as well, is the idea that, well, WIT has used AI image generation earlier this year. When Netflix Japan put out their announcement about Inu to Shonen, which was a 3-minute short that Studio WIT created earlier in the year, in response to labor shortages, it was not met with the most positive reception, is the only way that I'm going to put it. And considering that that was only a 3-minute short, even if you want to dismiss it as an experiment, this is something that Netflix has officially put their stamp on and that WIT committed to creating. And the fact that both Netflix and WIT are the main players that are involved in the production of the new One Piece, there is, I think, enough reason to have a bit of skepticism about whether or not they might possibly use this same approach. Because if they were willing to do it for something that was only 3 minutes, again, even if you want to dismiss it as just an experiment, it's the idea that One Piece's technical demands are going to be a lot more intense than for a 3-minute short. So, especially if it's supposed to be in response to labor shortages, then what am I supposed to expect from a rather ambitious shonen adaptation by a studio and a producer that were pretty blunt about the fact that they used AI background image generation for something that was only a few minutes long? Are they going to use this to cut corners? That's, I think, a legitimate question. I don't know whether it's going to be to the extent that it will be extremely pervasive. I think that perhaps there are some people who are maybe a little too quick to hit the panic button. But that being said, my finger is hovering over it. I am not in any way, shape, or form happy about the idea of AI in art. I teach music at university. Of course, I hate the idea of AI in art. The idea that somehow it could be a substitute for human contribution, which would probably just be an excuse for cutting back on anime costs, which means you don't have to pay as nearly as many animators. That's admittedly perhaps a little bit of catastrophizing, but this is also the reality that we live in now. And the idea that this is now possibly going to be something that covers One Piece is not a thought that makes me very thrilled. And I know that there are some who will say, well, Oda is involved in the project, and it's stipulated that if he doesn't like something, it will not be included. We need to be blunt about something. Even if Oda is involved in this project, that does not mean that it will be immune to problems or that it will somehow be blessed beyond all criticism. Oda may be the author of One Piece and the original person behind a lot of its ideas and its creation, and the fact that he's been at it so consistently is just a testament to his own work ethic. But the idea that he can't make an error in judgment, or that the practical reality of anime production will not mean that some sacrifices have to be made, even if they don't necessarily meet with his full approval, that's something that we need to also consider. Sometimes being involved in the production of an adaptation means you have to settle for less than your ideal version. And sometimes less than your ideal version is not particularly good. The other argument that this whole conversation point brings up, which I don't actually think is intended but is still a consequence, is that Oda is somehow completely 100% uninvolved with the Toei adaptation. Now, while I obviously have no way to confirm or deny this, so please take it with a grain of salt, I refuse to believe the fact that Toei does not consult Oda on a fair number of things. After all, One Piece is one of their biggest cash cows. The idea that they're just going to basically say, yeah, whatever the hell Oda wants, who the hell cares, let's just do whatever we want to. That's just, I don't think, how things work. Now, I'm obviously hoping for the best with this adaptation, but to immediately call this the answer to long-held prayers or the best way to introduce people to One Piece is being a little too eager to praise and a little too eager to be excited. We can all certainly recall recent events in anime that led to colossal disappointments, whether individually or collectively. My advice is simple. Wait and see. Be skeptical. Wit has taken on a massive undertaking. The onus is on them to not fuck it up. Since I'm recording this off the cuff, I'm more than positive that there's a fair number of things I'm simply not considering or not thinking about, so please feel free to drop what you're excited about or what you're skeptical about with the new adaptation in the comments below. I'll look forward to what you read because it's like 12:30 in the morning and I'm really fucking tired and I need to go to sleep. But in the meantime, this has been ZNote of ZNoteTaku. Happy viewing, everyone.